Endgames are very important part of the game, and frequently when we play endgames, when we get to the end game, the game is practically decided. Well, sometimes you have easily won endgame, sometimes you have totally drawn or lost end, but some positions are a big majority of the end games are very playable, and a lot of things you have to know about these end games. Well, besides basics of end games, ones that I explained on my instructional end game videos and DVDs, so there are some end games that require there is a lot of combinations and tactics in them, and a lot of people fail to recognize it because it's an end game, it's an easy part of the game, not too many pieces, not too many combinations can be there, but it's wrong. Here in the end games are some types, some themes of combinations which you cannot find in middle games, such as creating mating net with like only a couple of pieces, or with your pawns, or creating some still mating positions. We're going to see it later on this DVD what I mean, but you have to be aware that endgame does not necessarily mean you entering quiet phase of the game. Well, here is one endgame. It's a rook ending. Seems like very quiet position, and in this position it's black's move. Well, obviously move like e5 will not do anything, only improves white's king position, and black played king h7. It's a very strong move, very powerful move, and white did not recognize what is the threat. Maybe white thought that black wants to do king h6 followed by e5 mate, but that's not something can happen on a high level games. So white played rook to c7, failing to recognize any danger. And after rook to c7, it's interesting that white is totally lost. And here, why this kind of combinations you can only see in the end game, because you are not going to see king on f4 in the middle game too often. And after g5 check, white is hopelessly lost. Obviously, white must take the g5 pawn, but there are two ways: to take with a pawn or to take with a king. Taking with a pawn is not good, because after king g6 there is a forced mate. Forced mate because of e5 checkmate, and if white goes g4, then h4, and e5 mating threat is unstoppable. What did white think after rook c7? They thought if black plays king h6, they can always go g4 and there will be no checkmate. White escapes on g3 king, and meanwhile f7 pawn is under attack. So after g5 check, h takes g, as we just now explained, is not good, because king g6 and white gets mated. And after king takes g5, you see the bad position of white b5 rook. So black goes rook e5 check. White has only move, there are no choices. Rook f5 check, another only move, and now black gives check and wins white's b5 rook. And with an extra rook, it's an easy win for black. Black wins easily. It's interesting how quickly from very quiet positions, we got total disaster. White got total disaster. Rook c7 and g5 check. This is not instructional from how to play endgame. Absolutely not. This will show you how you have to be aware of some highly unusual dangers in any kind of endgame. So we're going to see several more examples like this. So tactics are very, very important in the endgame in a lot of cases. Well, let me show you one interesting position between two strong players, two grandmasters actually, and white was a piece down, and looks like white has some drawing chances. Here is the position, and it was played between Vladimir Akopian and white against the Chinese grandmaster here. White just played b4. Even though white is a piece down, here is what white anticipates. If black takes on f5, then after king g6, black has bishop and rook hanging. It doesn't look like this is any good for white. But if black takes, white takes back, and if black goes bishop f2, white exchanges the pawn, another pawn, and now white really has drawing chances, because what black has only one pawn on h6, and it's very difficult to win. It's impossible to win, especially if rooks will be exchanged, because you see this is theoretical drawn position even if white loses both pawns, because of h1 square is white square and bishop on e3 is dark square. So this cannot be done. So here comes absolutely amazing combination by the black, and we will see it right now. Here, against all odds, black plays rook takes f5 check, white goes king g4, now black goes rook g5 check, white plays king takes h6 as expected, and now beautiful bishop e3 move. You see black now is threatening rook takes b5 with a discover check, and all the white's moves are absolutely forced from now on. Rook takes g5 and b5. Now it's breakthrough, and black is making a pawn which is fast. Now, is this typical for the end games? No, this is strictly tactics, very powerful tactics, and at this point it's very decisive. So after b5, well, actually there is a pawn also on h3. After b5, their only move is h4 by white to show some little resistance. Black plays b takes a, king h7. Now white is ready to move the rook, so black must take on g5, pawn takes g5, And interestingly, white manages to make a queen. a3, g6, a2, g7, a1 queen, g8 queen, queen h1 check. And here we will see the power of the combination. This is the key point. King g7, queen g1 check, king h7, queen takes g8, king takes g8, and a4 second time. And now you can see that white is hopelessly lost, because black just simply makes the queen. Now, endgame positions, interesting and exciting tactics you can see in some studies. Well, in some studies you will see positions that have nothing to do with the real chess game, but in some of them they are very, very instructive, and you will see with a very unusual idea in very normal practical positions. Here is one practical position, very practical position, but it's an endgame. White has an exchange, and but normally it's not enough to win, because white has no pawns, absolutely no pawns. But rook a2 is the move. This makes highly unusual ending. Bishop g1, because bishop is hanging and protecting with knight f1 is not going to work, because after king e1 black loses another piece. Bishop g1, rook g2, and king f3. Actually, I looked at this endgame on one of the DVDs, by the way, but here I want to show you how tactical this can be. Now, we have like couple of pieces on board, and it's extremely tactical and a lot of combinations, only with minor pieces. But the beauty of tactics in the end game, that kings participate in combinations as well, not like in the middle games. In the middle games, king is a target only, but in the end games, king may be a target, may be also active participant. Rook takes g1, and now white has perfectly sufficient material advantage, but after king f2, rook e1, and e4, white has very badly placed rook that has no move. Actually, black is threatening to go e3, followed by e2 check and knight e4, winning white's rook. What can black do? Obviously, king d2 is not good because of e3 check, and if rook takes e3, knight f1 check. So what can white do after e4? Knight e6, e3, and here black is ready to execute their threat, which is e2 check. And here normally you may start thinking, how should I stop black's pawn? By playing knight d4 or by playing knight f4? And that the reason why we call this a lot of tactics, because we're gonna get now position that is one of the most unusual positions maybe in chess you can ever see. Knight d4 as well as knight f4 lead to a draw, because after e2 check, you see if white goes king d2 and knight e4 check, white loses the rook, and if knight takes on e2, then we gonna get absolutely incredible position where black wants to go knight e3 check, knight c4 check, and give perpetual check, and white has no defense since king cannot leave white rook. So in this position, after e2 check, this is already a draw. Knight takes e2, knight f1. So how can white win in this position? Here comes not knight d4 and not knight f4, but incredible knight c5 move. Now this is the kind of tactic that you may never see in your practical tournament game, but it may happen. It may happen. Now when black goes e2 check, white goes king d2, and black cannot do knight e4 check because white knight is gonna take it. So black has to go knight f1 check. Looks like they accomplished, they win white's rook. But then white goes king to c1, and you see that the rook is untouchable because of knight d3 checkmate. That gives us amazing position where black has to search for alternate decision, and black goes knight h2, but then white goes knight d3, and after king d2, after knight h2, knight d3 check, king e3, king c2, and knight f3, and white is put in the last test. Normally you have to move rook somewhere and that's it, but somewhere is not good enough. You have to go rook to b1. That's the only move that will allow you to win. That's how many concrete dangers you have to pass. So to stay away from rook b1, because if rook goes to h1, this is still a draw. Knight d4 check, and knight is in danger. King c3, knight b5 check, king c4, knight d6 check, and on king c3, knight b5 check. You see, white cannot abandon this knight, because if king goes to b4, after king takes d3, king takes b5, and king d2, it's an easy draw. So in this position, white cannot win anymore. So that's why we don't go to rook h1, we go rook to b1, and after knight d4 check, when white plays king c3, there is no knight b5 check, and white puts the knight on e1 and slowly wins the pawn on e2 and wins the game. So this is very, very interesting.